Hi everyone, I thought I would continue showing more fun NCL games, seeing as it is the best league in the country and has produced some amazing games even in the depths of Division 3. But this was Board 1 and it was a Metropolitan versus 3Cs2. It was George Dickson, ELO 2104 at the time against Jamie Horton. ELO converted 18-8 something it was, I think. His ECF was 154 anyway. And it features an interesting unorthodox opening, which went E4, Jamie was black, C5, B3. This isn't particularly brilliant, but white can often get away with second-rate moves and still preserve equality. And it at least took him out of book. And Jamie's already a very slow player, so if he's having to think for himself from like move 3 or 4, then you can smell a bit of time pressure. Knight c6, bishop b2, and e5. I mean, when someone plays some unorthodox opening like this, I think the best thing to do is just stick to the principles and take the centre. And black's kind of got like a reverse Marazzi bind now, and has therefore got more space. And also, white's dark square bishop is batting on granite, which is a common term we use at 3Cs. Like we have all like these terms which we always use, like every pawn move creates a weakness and loose pieces lose games. Well, the bishop is biting on granite is another one, and once someone at a club once said the bishop is biting on granite, which was pretty funny. Anyway, the problem with e5 is though it does leave the f7 square weak, so bishop c4, d6, knight c3, knight f6, d3, g6, knight g2, and bishop g7, and black's easily equalised from its unorthodox opening. However, bishop h6 is actually given here. I mean, you don't expect to put a black bishop on h6 this early, but it's certainly very good in this position. Also stops white castle and queenside if you wanted to. Bishop g7, castles, knight d5, knight takes, bishop takes, and knight e7. After c4, takes, pawn takes. Black's got the bishop pair and white's pawns are doubled, so this is pretty good. And now f5, getting some pressure going with the rook on the f-file and trying to undermine white's strong centre. f4, trying to open things up. F takes is probably best here. D takes, bishop g4, and after f takes e5, the good move queen e7, and white's centre is starting to collapse, and there's also a dangerous pin on e2 knight, and black's got a slight advantage here. Queen e7 was played, queen c2, bishop d7, preparing to recycle the bishop to a more active post. F takes e5, bishop takes e5, bishop takes, pawn, queen takes. Now queen c3, offering exchange of queens. Black could take the queens off and have a comfortable game with a bishop against the knight, although maybe not an advantage in this position. So therefore it was probably better to play rook a8. And white's best here is to swap the queens off himself with takes, rook takes, knight c3, protecting the pawns, and b5, and white's position is certainly playable here, although black's got the more comfortable position and maybe slight chances of an advantage. But rook a1 is a bad move, which was what can be punished in two ways here. Bishop b5 punishes it as well, where white's practically losing a pawn here by force. However, there's another way of punishing it, but it looks risky. It was f takes e4, rook takes f8 check, king takes f8, d takes e4, and now it looks risky, but queen takes e4 is perfectly fine for black. If this dangerous looking check, then simply king g8, and if rook f1, hoping to get a mate on f7, then you can actually take the d5 pawn. I mean, obviously you can't take white's knight because of mate, it's on f7, but you can certainly take the pawn, protecting the mate, maybe threatening rook takes e2 if f8 can be defended, and black's threatening queen e6 here, so white has to play something like knight f4, and although this looks dangerous, after queen e4 holding g6, white can't do anything, and black is simply 2 pawns up with the bishop against the knight, and domination of the e line. However, bishop b5 is more safe, and after the queen's come off, these pawns are going to be dropping off. Knight c1, protecting d3 for now, but rook fe8, a4, bishop a6, rook f4, and now g5. Also, the pawn could have been won by the tactical shot rook takes d5, where the pawn can't take, because then white's rook goes and then the knight goes as well, because there's a fork. And white would also be in big trouble here. But g5 is perfectly fine, because now the rook can't protect the e4 pawn, and after it moves then it drops off. Now the rooks come off as well. Now we've got a simplified position now with black up a clear at pawn up, and white's unorthodox opening has not worked here. And white is 2104 elo, a lot higher than Jamie. So this game certainly isn't over, and there's going to be a lot of fights still. But now comes rook d4, and white's losing another pawn because the knight and pawn are both forked and they both can't be saved. So after the knight moves, then that drops off. Knight e4. At least white's got a centralised knight as compensation for the two pawns. Well, he's threatening knight f6 check. So king g7, getting out of any checks and forks. King f2, bringing the king into the game. In the end game, the active king is key. b6, g4, h6. h3 is best here, but black should eventually win with his two pawns, but white goes wrong with knight f6. And now comes this check. And white has all white's moves are bad here. The best which was played is king g3. King e3 allows a mate in 1 with rook e2. King e1 allows check and rook takes h2, where black is 3 pawns up. King g1 allows check, check. Rooks come off and now white's knight falls, so black's then a piece and 2 pawns up. King g3 is the best of the worst, but now the rooks come off, well, and white's got no counter play now for the 2 pawns. White does actually, with his Wishen's win a pawn back, but there's no stopping well, bishop c2, and now both these pawns are dropping off. Knight b5, bishop takes b3, knight c3, king f6. The king's gonna come in and then hit the knight on d4, and then when it moves, the a4 pawn drops, and black's 3 connected queenside passed pawns are gonna queen. And white could resign this, but battles on gallantly. Also, this could have been played. c4 is immediately crushing, with bishop c6 check followed by queening coming. However, bishop d1 check is perfectly fine. After king f2, b5, b4, and now b3, and pawns queening, so white throws in the towel. And that's a great win, that. Shows his own potential. And I hope you enjoyed it as well and found it instructive. Please leave any comments and thoughts. Thanks very much.